Hi there, I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor and you're watching Coffee and Crypto, a show in which coffee meets crypto, meets lots of information and everything you need to know about the crypto world. So what do we have for you today? Well, firstly, let me ask a question. If I were to ask you, what would be the one thing that's holding you back from investing in cryptocurrencies, what would that be? Well, for most people I've spoken to, two things really pop up. One is, there is no regulation in India, fair point. The second is the crazy amount of volatility when it comes to the crypto space. The fact that cryptos are extremely volatile, you don't know if the valuation will remain the same or it will be worth the same or it will change dramatically up or down both ways in a matter of days. Well, if you are the second type wondering about stability, then I have one word, or is it two words, I'm not really sure, for you. It's called stable coins. What exactly are stable coins? Why is everyone from investors to regulators so interested in this particular form? As usual, I'm going to give you all the answers, but first, I need my coffee. So, stable coins. One word, two word, I'm still not sure, but we'll talk about that with our experts as well. These are basically a type of crypto that attempt to offer some sort of price stability because they are actually backed by a reserve asset like a fiat currency or gold, or usually an asset that actually has value in what is called the real world, so to speak, right? Now, I actually think stable coins are one way wherein, you can have your cake and eat it too in the crypto space because it offers stability of a traditional currency as well as the convenience and privacy of a cryptocurrency as well. Now, these coins are normally marketed towards investors who may not want to take the classic risk associated with the crypto, like it could be Bitcoin, it could be Ethereum and the others as well. Now, why is that? Because while Bitcoin is, of course, the most popular crypto, its value has been very, very wild. It rose from around $4,000 in March of 2020 to $65,000 in April of 2021. And then it plunged down again over to 50% to around 30,000 in June. Now, in fact, its value keeps fluctuating within days as well. And remember, one tweet might not be Elon Musk anymore, but can change a lot of fortunes when it comes to these coins. This also brings me to the other concern that people have about crypto, right? It's purchasing power in the real world. You see, the short-term volatility of cryptos like Bitcoins makes it difficult to use it as an actual value of exchange. For example, if you were to buy a packet of chips, say, 10 rupees, its value is likely to remain the same. The value of your 10 rupee note is also likely to be the same. But if you were to buy that using crypto, you can buy it one day, but next day you never know how much you'll be spending for that same packet of chip. It doesn't quite work well, does it? So stable coins try and bridge that gap between regular currency and cryptocurrency. To explain exactly how stable coins work, let me tell you the types of stable coins really out there. This will help you visualize the concept also well. Okay, first up is a fiat collateral stable coin. Now, these basically maintain a fiat currency reserve. Fiat currencies, I have told you several times now. Let me repeat it one more time. It's like your dollar, your rupee, euro, it could be anything, any regular currency out there. Now, all of these stable coins issue a corresponding number of crypto coins as well, these currencies. For example, one coin of Tether, the most popular stable coin, is set to value or have a value equivalent to that of $1 US. So basically, a stable coin could be 100 million in reserve and 100 million coins can be issued, each of which value 1. Now, if the stable coin's owner wants to cash it out, supposedly 20 coins, ideally they should be able to take a corresponding $20 from the reserve. Now, this collateral does need to be in cash and can also does not always, need to be in cash. It can also include precious metals like gold or silver or assets like oil as well. So that's one type. Second type is crypto collateralized stablecoins. In this, a stablecoin is basically backed by another type of crypto. Now, I know what you're thinking. even the reserve or collateral crypto is unstable. So how can this possibly be solving the problem? But the thing here is that the reserve crypto is a over collateralized. This means that a larger number of crypto tokens are maintained as a reserve for a lower number of stable coins. So even if the fluctuations happen, the crypto remains relatively stable. Okay? The example of this is DAI stable, DAI stablecoin, which is backed by Ether as a reserve. There is a third type of stablecoin. It's called non-collateralized stablecoins. These are no reserves, but they include a working mechanism to try and retain a stable price. Like, you know how central banks print banknotes in a way that maintains the valuation of our currency, right? These can basically be programmed onto a crypto platform itself. An example of this is the longest running algorithm stablecoin, that is Ampleforth, right? So there are basically these three types of stablecoins. Clear? Simple? Having understood that, there is more you need to know. And the question, of course, you have in your mind is, are stable coins really as stable as they sound? Well, that brings me to some of the concerns that surround stable coins as well. First, of course, is ultimately even the stable coins are held somewhere, right? Whether you own a digital wallet or with an exchange. So the vulnerability of the platform itself obviously affects the coin. Second is the risk associated with the counterparty, the banks involved in holding these reserves, and the organization which have issued these stable coins. And third, and the most important here is the risk really associated with the reserves? Basically, in an ideal situation, the issuer of a stable coin should have the exact amount of reserves as a coin issued. Like I gave you the example earlier, like if they issue 100 million coins worth $1 each, they should have $100 million of reserve. But that may not always happen. For example, many believed that Tether actually does not have enough dollar reserve. Sample this. In May of 2021, Tether broke down the reserves for the stable coin, and it turned out that just about 3% of their holdings were actually cash. Most of it was in commercial paper, which, mind you, need not translate into the same amount of cash. So how should you really determine whether a stable coin is safe? Well, as usual, there are no guarantees when it comes to investment in these. But here are some basics that you can do as a background check, right? One is check the issuer's reserve report. Check who is backing the coin, what is behind the stability of this coin as well. Check those three factors that we talked about. Also check how much can you actually use it in the real world. If you aim to use it as a mode of exchange, as a currency, how many people are actually accepting that coin? Basically, stable coins do provide higher level of stability than most cryptos. They can become also, when it comes to a crisis situation, also very, very risky. After all, a known devil, as they say, is better than an unknown one. But having understood those very basics about stablecoin, let me break it open for our guest today. Joining us today, I'm very happy to have Nitin Gaur with us, Director of IBM Financial Sciences and Digital Assets. Thanks so much for your time, Nitin. We also have Rohas Nagpal with us. Rohas is back on CC. So welcome back, Rohas, to you. Let me come to you, Nitin, first. You have actually helped in the launch of several of these stable coins. Tell me, what is it that we need to be careful about for anybody looking into investment in stable coins?
Yeah, first of all, Sonal, great to be here on the Coffee and Crypto, and thank you for the invite. Looking forward for this fun and rich conversation, and no pun intended. So first thing is piggybacking on your stablecoin, definition. And as I build stablecoins for some of the networks, we define stablecoin as a digital asset that's collateralized by a price stable asset, which is INR, Euro, or USD, issued and collateralized and guaranteed by a regulated financial institution. And and the primary purpose of this is for the purpose of transaction processing, settlement and blockchain, powered business networks. So one thing that we look for is when there is an issuer in stablecoin ecosystems, whether issuer is a bank or a financial institution that's using a bank, and to your first model, which is fiat collateralized backed IOUs, essentially is an entity that keeps that amount of rupees or dollars into a bank account and issues equal amount of tokens for the purpose of transaction processing. And if you look at the history of why we had stablecoin in the first place, is in absence of a digital version of central bank digital currencies, which we will get to in a few minutes, you realize when you buy something, you pay for it. And payment of that with cash, or let's say Paytm, is settlement, which is final. And we call that settlement finality as it represents the duality of a transaction, which is two sides of a transaction as you process. And in the traditional crypto world, for folks who are not in the true mining sense and were not involved in elements of understanding the mining, the incentive economics, they had to buy crypto space. In the absence of true digital money, stable coins were born, which facilitated that entire movement of money from a traditional financial system we live in, and digitizing and tokenizing those tokens and moving them into the space, which allows me to provide notion of fungibility, which in most simplistic terms, a rupee is a rupee, and all the rupees have the same value, which is essentially the definition that you defined earlier, Sonal. And so that is essentially the genesis of stablecoin, was to solve the true sense of duality and speed of digital transaction. And it then morphed into all the things that you mentioned. And one thing that we look for, or the system that I have designed with some of our cohorts, especially financial institution, is again, working with the regulators and informing them in terms of the total amount of supply and total amount of collateral that you're backing, and having an auditor that provides that reporting structure, as you mentioned, is the right due diligence to do, in my opinion. So I'll pause at that.
Right.
And love to get your perspective.
I also want to understand the relation stablecoins hold to, say, digital currencies that a lot of countries are looking at. India is looking at that as well. But in a bit, let me bring in Rohas in the conversation. Rohas, you brought to my notice that Facebook is actually coming out with the stablecoin. What is that all about?
Sure. So actually, Facebook wanted to come out with its own cryptocurrency, and they had a project called Libra a few years ago. And they roped in all the big guys, including Master, Visa. But then they faced a lot of regulatory problems. So they've now kind of shifted their direction. And now it's called Facebook Diem, D-I-E-M. And it's going to be a US dollar pegged stablecoin. Personally, I would be a big fan of it as and when it comes out. Because if that is put into the Facebook ecosystem of WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook, I think it would be absolutely earth-shattering. And it would make it very easy for people to move money around the world.
See, so going back to my conversation, if I can go back to Nitin on this one. Nitin, if you could explain to us, what does the coming in of stable coins do to an economy? Take India, for example, which is already looking at a digital currency to be rolling out very soon. How does the entire dynamics work here?
So a few things. As the world is moving towards a more digital way of interacting, we shop online, we do things online, we pay to each other, and oftentimes that payment is happening through either cash or Paytm, which again represents the notion of element. So what stablecoins essentially do is bring the notion of digital finality. I gave an example of a settlement. When you pay for something, your transaction is final. Stablecoins provide that in the digital world. And what stablecoins do is speed up the entire process of e-commerce, the entire process of transactions. And so the notion of unlocked capital, which is what we talk about.
Exactly what digital currency is also trying to do.
So digital currency, in many cases, is a digital version of stablecoin, because the fact that central bank digital currency doesn't exist anymore in any parts of the world, and there are 80% of world's banks who are looking into rolling out projects. In absence of a sovereign, which is a government-issued digital currency, stablecoins became the next best thing, because the financial institutions could issue a stablecoin backed by sovereign-issued currency. And that is a good interim step, in my opinion. It speeds up commerce. It speeds up the unlocked potential of capital, that money is flowing, and money is always good when it flows. But second thing, it simplifies drastically, which we'll talk in a few minutes about, cross-border payment, which is where the projects like Diem and Celo are trying to address.
Right. We need lots of minutes to talk about that actually, perhaps later, but I have last few minutes on this segment. So let me go to Rohas as well on this one. Rohas, then, are you somebody as an expert looking at this would advise beginners to perhaps get started with stable coins, people who are trying to understand the crypto world?
That's an excellent question. As an investor, stable coins are really good because we can earn up to 10 to 15% per annum rate of interest on it. So just look at it. As an Indian, I could convert my rupees into USDT, one of the very popular stable coins, and earn 10 to 14% per annum interest. Plus, usually in any given year, the rupee falls a little bit in terms of the dollar value. So I get that extra return also. And that's a lot more than what you would get in a bank fixed deposit, for example. But you have to remember one thing, there's always a greater risk.
Yeah.
Because what if the stablecoin issuer suddenly vanishes? That could happen. And usually banks don't vanish as fast as stablecoin operators could. But other than that, I'm a big fan of them from an investment point of view.
All right then. So good to have both your opinions on this. I'm afraid that's all the time we have, but we'll stay connected. There's so much to discuss on this front. With that, I think it's time to take a good coffee break as well. But don't go anywhere, because coming up on the other side is another very interesting concept. It is said to be one of the most talked about startups when it comes to the crypto world. It's said to be some sort of a bank, but for crypto. What exactly am I saying? Stay tuned. You'll know the rest. Welcome back. You're watching CC. And okay, let me say this. When I say the word vault, what comes to your mind? Money Heist, Ocean's 11. But would you believe me if I tell you that there is a vault in the world that does not have just cash or gold or diamonds, but actually keeps crypto. The only difference is that this vault comes with a D in it. Let me not confuse you anymore, and let me introduce our next guest who can do all the explaining on this as well. So say hello to Darshan Bhatia joining us on the program. So Darshan, I don't want to start by talking about what else this is, but tell us, what is this vault with a D all about? What I understand it that it's some sort of a bank for cryptocurrencies, but that sounds like an oxymoron to me.
Firstly, thanks so much for having me on the program. It's a pleasure. We are about a 3-year-old firm, and what we do is really simple. We notice that people, when they get exposure to cryptocurrencies for the first time, onboard themselves through a platform, typically their preferred exchange. And when they do so, they're taking counterparty risk at that touch point. And sometimes these exchanges tend to be regulated if the licensing is matured, sometimes they're not. But if they're taking this risk, we believe that they should be financially compensated for that, just like how your preferred banking partner pays you for deposits in the form of a savings account and a fixed deposit. So we've questioned that assumption of why not pay people for entering the crypto space and storing their wealth in the crypto world. And yeah, that's that. We started with that assumption.
So you're telling me I could take a loan on my crypto holding. So say I have a particular amount of Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever, I can go to you and I can say, well, take this, and in lieu of this, I want a loan of X amount.
Absolutely. So we've bridged the credit market.
Wow.
On one end, you can get a loan, and on the other end, you can earn interest.
Right. And any other kind of services that you offer so far?
At the moment, we offer the credit instrument, interest paid on one end, interest earned on the other. And we also have the simple capability to buy and sell into the crypto world, just like what you would expect from a typical exchange, except that the interest payment is automatic. So we drive your financial interests far better than a traditional exchange. And our roadmap comprises of account issuing and cards as well, so that we can encompass more touch points of what you would expect a bank to do for you.
So if, say, the valuation of crypto has fallen deeply while I've taken a loan from you, will you bear that, or will that mean more interest that I have to pay?
So just like how stable coins that you mentioned tend to be over-collateralized, especially in the crypto world, similarly, our loans are over-collateralized too. And we have a margin call and a system of liquidation in place. I'm happy to tell you over the 3 years that we've been up and running, 0% NPAs, no risk, especially from the lender side, because of our liquidation systems.
I see. Well, Vault with the D now has already raised nearly 27 million in funding since you were founded, and you support about 30 cryptocurrencies as well. And so it's good to get to know all these details. And how many countries are you operating in currently?
We operate in 190 countries at the moment, so we're truly global. We're a license applicant in Singapore, we're regulated in the US, we're working towards licensing in UK, Germany, Australia, and a few other countries over the next 12 months.
All right, Darshan, sounds very exciting. So good luck to you. Good to see an Indian face leading the crypto front as well. Thanks so much for joining us on CC.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we could pack in this edition. But like I always say, we are here to decode the world of cryptocurrency for you. So if you feel there's something that you need to know more about, write into us. If there are some questions that you're facing, write into us. If you feel there's a great crypto story that you want to talk about, well, that's a good note to leave as well. And well, Diwali is coming, so I'm sure a lot of gambling is going to happen. A lot of investment is also going to happen. Is crypto going to be one of those? Well, that is going to be a topic of discussion next week. Until then, ta-da!